Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Miha Matlievski. He's a Slovenian high school dropout that put in 12 years of hard work to start successful businesses to attain a personal net worth of $15 million. In 2009, his world came crashing down when he got a call from his bank informing him that they foreclosed on his real estate investments, leaving him responsible for $5 million of collective debt. He was down with even thoughts of suicide coming to mind. He embraced his failure and began to take charge of his life again. He created a startup that generated 8 figures in less than a year, and since his resurrection, he's began to be known as the Fail Coach, where he helps entrepreneurs around the world embrace and have a healthy relationship with failure with the goal of reaching a higher level of success. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Roman, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be a guest on your podcast.
Awesome, not a problem. So tell me a little bit about your journey. Obviously, the intro gave some of that, but a shortened version where you got started and some of the things that got you to now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to be quick, and then I'll let you tell me where you want me to dive a little bit deeper. So, as you mentioned, I dropped out of high school because of the Italian language, and I first started working for my father's company, and unfortunately, he died quite soon afterwards. He had pancreatic cancer, and so I had to take over the company. And I had no clue what I'm doing because before I was more or less son by occupation, doing some sales, doing some networking. I really always enjoyed, the connecting with people. That was something I was truly passionate about. But anything else about running the company, I had no clue how to do it. And soon problems started to occur. But fortunately, at that time, it was, the time in Europe when everything was going up. So I found some people who were ready to invest in my company, get me out of first troubles, and I was able to just dedicate myself to what I'm good at. They took over the running of the company, and things went really smooth. And unfortunately, I didn't learn any lessons from that because I found a solution, and I didn't experience enough pain yet. So after a year or so, the company was doing 100 or even more than 100% more in yearly revenue than before. And then it was just growing from there on. And soon I started feeling a little bit cocky even more. And I had always plenty of ideas. I was always good at observing the surroundings and figuring out, the problems and solutions to the problems. And so I started creating more companies on my own. And under the impression that, oh, now I'm so good and I can do this by myself. Unfortunately, like I said, I didn't learn the lessons. And at that time in Europe, things were, easy. Like you were literally walking down the street and the banks would throw money at you, even just for an idea. And one of my companies was in real estate. I've never built even a house for a dog, but I undertook this huge project, which was roughly, I would say 50 to 60 million US when it would be finished and built. And I bought the land in 2007. And then, the paperwork, this and that. I made so many mistakes along the road. And then the financial crisis came in 2008 to US, and then in 2009 to Europe, and slowly also to Slovenia. And at one point, my project was not viable anymore because the prices of real estate dropped so much that it would actually cost me more per square meter to build it than to sell it. And I remember it was Monday, December 7th, I think, December 7th, Monday morning, when I got the call from the bank, and they told me, we're out of this project. We will stop financing it and we will take our money back. And because I really went into this project with all my heart, I put everything that I had, all my other companies, my personal properties, everything as a collateral. And bam, next day, Tuesday, they just started cashing in all the collaterals. What happened was that they took money away from my other companies. I wasn't able to pay the bills. I wasn't able to pay suppliers, taxes, employees, nothing, because everything happened so overnight. So the bank got most of the money actually back, but I was left with owing what felt like money to half of the country. I mean, in truth, Slovenia is not that big of a country, 2 million people, and it really felt like I owe money to half of the country. And I ended up $5 million in personal debt, personally owing that money to ex-employees, taxes, this, that, and so on. And in Slovenia at that time, it was a rule, a law, that if you owe money for taxes in your business and if you owe money for employees, you can't start personal. I mean, you can start personal bankruptcy, but it wouldn't do anything, because, you know, the whole point of personal bankruptcy is to get rid of the debt, and you can't get rid of the debt if those clauses are valid for you. So I went into huge depression, huge anxiety. My mind was like a nuclear reactor, constantly going back and forth. Suddenly there was this whole darkness within me. I didn't feel like I failed once. It was like, I am a failure. This is it. The life has stopped. Like, from here on, there is no good for me anymore. There was no, no tunnel, no light, no nothing. And slowly that idea of suicide started creeping in, because all I wanted was to silence my head, because it was constantly running, and all I wanted was a little bit of peace and quiet. I mean, every morning I would wake up to gazillion calls from people I owed money to, and those were not nice calls. It wasn't, like, oh, we're gonna sue you. It was more like, a call from a mafia boss, telling me what they will do to me, to my mom, and so on. Because at that time, I only had my mom left. I got divorced. I lost most of my friends, so-called friends, because I was part of all this, Rotary clubs and cigar clubs and this and that. And I was thinking, oh, wow, these are my friends. But the moment things got the way they got, those were the first people to never answer my phone call again. So I didn't just lose the money. I didn't just lose the companies and my personal network. I literally ended up being alone on the whole world. And that whole pressure and everything that was going inside of me. I mean, I remember just lying on the couch, in that fetus position. And I wasn't able to move. I wasn't able to do anything. And all I wanted was to go out, because I thought, okay, if I go out, maybe, the nuclear reaction will stop. But then I sometimes would go out for a coffee or something, and all I wanted was to go back inside, to not be surrounded by people, to not be outside. So it was this strange, whatever I did, nothing felt right. And I was just trying to run away from whatever was in my way. And so, yeah, suddenly I was thinking more and more about suicide. And then in 2010, one night, it was around 11 p.m., I just started climbing on the other side of the balcony. That apartment was still not taken away from me. It will be a few months later, but I just started to climb outside. And once I was there, I remember looking down. I was holding myself with one hand and to the balcony, and I was like leaning, like half leaning over it and looking down. And what went through my head was, am I high enough? Like, will this fall really end it? Or is this going to be another failure and I'm going to end up on a wheelchair? I mean, that was going through my head at that time. And then suddenly I said to myself, really super out loud, so who knows who from neighborhood heard it. I said, like, you, I don't know if I can say the F word. So, you F word failed. And it was hearing myself say that, the word you, like this movie started in my head, like going backwards. Like, I made that decision. I chose that business partner. I opted not to go to the lawyer for this contract. I employed that person. I. Suddenly, for the first time in my life, I took on my wrong decisions of everything that I did wrong. But the funny thing was that it didn't got me down. It actually empowered me, because my next thought was, if I did all those stupid mistakes and I still got to the point where I was, imagine what I can do if I actually take those lessons, learn, change habits, do everything differently, how much even bigger thing I can do. And suddenly there was this, ray of light on the other side of a long tunnel. I knew that I'm not going to solve things overnight, but I saw the light, and I climbed back in, and I sat down and I stayed up all night, and I started just writing a huge to-do list of everything I need to change, learn, do differently. And the first thing I did in the morning, I started calling people that would usually call me in the morning. And I was like, you know what? If doing all those terrible things to me will solve the problem, and you'll be happy with this, then let's get it over with. Like, just take your gun, whatever. This is where I am. Let's finish it. Because I can't keep going with all that every morning. If you want me to repay my debt, if you want to get your money back, I don't owe you guys $3,000 or $5,000 and I can just get a job and repay everything in 2-3 months. I owe $5 million. I need to create something huge to repay all of that debt. So you calling me every morning just puts me in a huge depression. I can't do anything. Leave me alone. Let's make a deal. I'll call you once a month to update you. But for the rest of the month, I need my peace and quiet. I need to work on things, and I need to create something big. And amazingly, they all agreed to that. Then the whole journey started. The journey of working on my personal development first, then on my business development. And then in 2014, I started a new startup, energy efficiency startup. We were helping big corporations save on how much electricity and gas they use. And I was able to lay down all the right foundation. I was able to get a huge investment to start that company. I was able to scale it to multiple 8 figures in monthly revenue in less than a year, and to 9 figures next year. I was able to exit the company through a technology takeover by a Fortune 100 company. I can't go too much into details because of the NDAs, but I was able to exit straight away. Because I did all the foundation the way it should be done. I was seen as the least important person in the company, and I really was. And I was able to repay my debt, and I went on a long vacation. I think it was like 2.5 months. And I came back, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? I have the freedom of time. I have the freedom of money. I have the freedom of choice to do whatever I want to do. Now, what do I want to do? Do I want to, I don't know, go to every burger joint and try every burger in this world and every craft beer or whatever? And I realized, like, all my adult life, I was an entrepreneur. It's in my DNA. I'm not just entrepreneur by occupation. It's who I am. And I love hanging out with entrepreneurs. I love talking with them, masterminding, brainstorming, all of that. And I just went to the first startup incubator and volunteered to be a mentor. And, slowly, because of all the failures, all the successes, and how I was able to turn my life around, and the whole thing, in a small country like that, people knew, people talked, and suddenly a lot of companies started calling me. I got invitations to speak at different conferences about the whole story, and more companies started calling me. And then a few months later, I was thinking, okay, maybe it's time for me to start something new. And I wasn't sure what to start. And then a friend of mine said, well, you love helping people so much. Why wouldn't you do that? And I was like, why wouldn't I? And that's how Fail Coach started. And yeah, I mean, the name Fail Coach, again, this same friend, I was like, oh, how do I name this? You know, like business development coach or something like that. And he was like, dude, you always talk about your failures, and every story that you tell us, every lesson that you give us always starts with some failure of yours from the past and what you learned from it and so on. And I said, well, why wouldn't you be the Fail Coach? And I loved it. I went online, saw the domain is free and all of that. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And yeah, so far in the last few years, I've worked with over 3,500 people in different ways, startups, new people, new to entrepreneurship, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs. And if you ask me what it is that I do, I help people mostly with establishing healthy emotional relationship with failure. Because it's so important, because in reality, when you're an entrepreneur, you will have much more failures on the journey than successes. So it's so important that you know how to deal with failures. Of course, I help them also with, you know, other hard skills and so on, but that's really where my true passion is in helping people overcome that negative emotions, negative self-talk that starts when you're dealing with failure.
Oh, that's great. I think obviously there's a lot there in that story. I think one thing is important is the circle you surround yourself with, and the people that you think are your friends aren't necessarily your friends. It's like the prodigal son example in the Bible, when he had all the money, everybody was around, but when he had nothing, nobody would help him. So I think that's important. A strong circle, like you said, you didn't have that much close family with you, but you did have your mom. And I think also, obviously, it was a significant amount of debt personally having to repay 5 million. And I know people personally, my brother's friend actually failed out of law school, had about 6-figure debt and didn't know what to do, and basically committed suicide. So that the money portion leading to suicide is very high. And I think it's important to kind of take a step back, maybe talk to somebody close, or really reevaluate what you have in your life and things you should be thankful for. Because with money, I mean, like you said, also, you got a little cocky and ahead of yourself also when you're younger, that you can do anything and, make the money, but the money can go like, you
Yeah.
said, like this, like, and then you have to figure out what to do.
Yeah. Well, Roman, the thing is, I was 20 something. I had more than all my, high school friends together, amazing cars, traveling, restaurants, this, that, invitations to this gala, that gala, all the unlimited spending, credit cards and things like that. I mean, and I was 20 something. Of course, I mean, I was on a cloud number 9. I mean, I was flying high. I was, I never did drugs. That's strange, because I was always very, I easily influenced by the society just to be, in there, surrounded, liked, and so on. And I mean, now looking back, I see how empty my life was. I mean, even the marriage, we got married, I don't know, because everybody else was getting married, and it was just, oh, I'm with her, let's get married. I mean, that's the sad reality. While we were married in the beginning with all that money, we were constantly busy with planning our next trip, our next restaurant, what we'll buy, what will, and when the money went out, when you actually need to start talking about deep things and stuff like that, you realized how we completely different we are. That there's nothing besides, planning the lovely, that things with the money, that there's nothing that connects us. And, the same with friends. I mean, I was just naive. I didn't understand that world of, A-listers or things like that. I was, coming from this naive thinking that, oh, we are such good friends because we hang out every, Tuesday and so on. I didn't see things for what they really were. It wasn't that they did something bad or that they changed. I just wasn't seeing things clearly, because I was just under so many influences from all around the society and media and so on, And, I was just a kid.
No, I agree. And I think the whole failure part, I think it's like you said, everybody fails, but as long as you learn from the failure, and I think every great idea or great company or historic thing came out of several, if not tens or hundreds of failures to get to that one right successful thing. So like you said, you'll have more failures as an entrepreneur, but those failures are building blocks to get you
Yeah.
to that one or two successes that trumps that all. And you learn each time you fail from it to get to
Yeah.
that end result.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way I look at it is like this. So, you start your own business, and you don't start a business because you already believe it will fail. Then you don't even start because of the fear of failure. But you start it with these big dreams, and the more entrepreneurial you are, crazier, bigger your dreams and your goals, and the impact that will make on other lives and your life and your family and so on. So you have these crazy high emotions, positive emotions connected with that possible outcome. And then when you don't reach it, what happens is, of course, the opposite. You go like as high as those positive emotions could be, you go that same, just in the opposite direction. And that's the problem with the emotions in this case. And that's why I'm always saying you have to establish healthy emotional relationship with failure, because failure is all about negative emotions that are going through you, and the negative self-talk that you then start with yourself, and like kind of unifying yourself with that failure to be a failure. Like, that's it, I'm a failure, period. It's not I failed once, I am a failure. That's my life reality right now. And the thing is, most often we try to hide it, we try to keep it inside, we don't talk about it with our loved ones, we don't talk about it with our friends, with anybody, like we don't go to a therapist, we don't go to anybody, and it starts creating that negative energy. Like for me, it felt almost like when you're constipated around the stomach, and it was this pain somewhere there. Only when you're constipated you can relieve that pain, but this wasn't going anywhere. And it was only when I literally came to the end, to the rock bottom, and screamed that out loud, was when I first said it out loud. And just doing that lifted this heavy weight from my heart, from my shoulder, and I felt so much lighter. And then when I started talking about it, sharing the story, the more I did that, the lighter I was. And that's where the healing starts, is when you open up. And why I even do what I do and why I share this story, it's not that I love the story. I mean, it was what it was. I learned a lot of good lessons. I do understand why I needed that, because that Miha wasn't really living the real values, or like the real life. It was like this artificial life influenced by the outside world. And so because of that, I'm now much more in touch with who I truly am, what I am, and so on. So it's because when I tell the story, every time, every podcast I go to, every conference where I speak about it, there is always at least one person that reaches out, tells me their story. And often it's for the first time in their life. Or quite a few times I had relatives of entrepreneurs who did kill themselves, and reach out to me and tell me, what, Miha, now that I've heard what went through you, why you started even considering suicide, and what was happening with you, now I finally got the closure in understanding why our father or our brother or sister did what they did. And it's because of that, because the healing starts when you start talking about it. But I've learned that people will not just start if I don't go first. And I have to tell it the way it was. If I try to fake it, if I try to, leave the bad part out, there won't be any connection.
Yep. I mean, it'd be taking out like the authenticity, I think.
Yeah.
That kind of negativity. People, I had a psychologist, a doctor of psychology on, and people tend to kind of dwell or go into a negative thought pattern naturally. So breaking those negative thoughts and replacing them with positive habits that lead to also positive, thoughts, things that encourage it, like meditation, reading for, empowering your mind and getting more knowledge, exercise, eating right, to kind of combat that in a way as an entrepreneur as well, because those negative thoughts are going to come regardless, because you're an entrepreneur. That means it's you, tackling the world. So that's a lonely place to be regardless.
Yeah, that's why, like when I'm working with entrepreneurs, one of the first thing is I guide them so that they can create like this supportive environment for themselves. Anything from, like what's your alarm clock in the morning? Like mine used to be from John Bon Jovi, It's My Life and It's Now or Never, but that one inspired me to, my morning routine includes watching a few TED Talks. I have books all around my house. I don't read them often anymore, too so much often, but I've read all of them, and just seeing the cover, I can remember what the book is about, and just things like that, and then printing out some of your dreams and things like that, and putting that on the wall, like just surrounding yourself with that environment, supportive environment, creating that supportive environment. And then soft skills, so many entrepreneurs are like, oh, I don't need that, zen stuff, like just tell me how to scale, how to grow, how to manage cash flow. But in reality, you need mindfulness. Why? So you can step away from reacting on autopilot. You need to learn the breathing technique so that you can cool yourself down in the heated moment where you want to make a negative reaction, emotional reaction, emotional intelligence,
Yep, I was
to
going to
know
mention that.
how to balance the logic and the emotions, and when to use what. It's all those skills that are really, really so crucial in overcoming failure, and reacting in good and the right way.
Yeah, I think that emotional IQ is built over time too, because I think the way you react now would be a lot different than you reacted to the same thing in your 20s. So that's something that comes with experience, but you can obviously speed it up with certain, tactics and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with hard skills, they are easy to learn,
Hmm.
and you learn and you apply. With soft skills, you can't really just learn and apply in a single day. You need to practice them, and practice them often, and that's how they get under your skin, and you create new habits and new patterns. Like, for example, any time when anything that could probably throw me out of balance happens to me nowadays, I immediately go to breathe in, breathe out, and I just do a quick breathing exercise, and that happens on autopilot, so but it took me quite some time to reach that point. And I mean, for me, I use the most stupid possible way to learn those things. I just created gazillion reminders in my phone to go off every 30 minutes. Be mindful, be mindful, be mindful. And every time I would just, okay, I haven't been really mindful for the past half an hour. I'll try to do an hour, and reset every 30 minutes, quick reset. And slowly, I would be mindful 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And a few weeks or months later, I was mindful for majority of the day, really present, being in the driver's seat of my life.
Yeah, I agree. I think that repetition gets you to that point. So, what motivates you to succeed currently in your life?
um I mean, we need to figure out like what's the definition of success, or which definition do you have in mind?
I mean, it's an individual basis. So one thing, obviously, it may be more than one thing, but just one thing that kind of motivates you today. Obviously, motivations change over time as well. But
Yeah.
right now, this month, what kind of motivates you to, get up, do that extra thing, and continue to stay motivated and focused?
Okay. Well, I believe that we can't really find our purpose, but that our purpose finds us when we are ready for that. And some people find it very young age, and some people later on. It took me quite some years to really figure out what's my purpose. And I don't know why, but there is this belief in me that my purpose is to be the person that will help break the taboo called failure. And that's the driving force behind everything that I do. And I can't even explain it. I really can't. It's just something that's constantly in me. And even if I try to fight it, even if I try to break free from it, even, sometimes you're waiting in line to step on the stage and you look at the crowd and it's thousands of people and you're like, why on earth do I put myself through this? Why do I have to go up there and tremble and sweat and I'm shaking and all of this? Why do I need this? But then, I just can't fight it. It's bigger than me. And that's my daily motivation, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's that kind of legacy because me personally, like as well, I do a lot of kind of pro bono work. I'm a foster parent as well. So in my 20s, I think I would have said, money motivates me or something material. But like when you get to a certain point in life and you've reached a certain level of success, you want to give back and kind of leave a legacy behind you.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I constantly do free stuff here in the local community just to help people break free from, the mentality and to help them make something and live that uh, life that they dream with the freedom of choice, which for me is the ultimate freedom. And then I do um, a lot of humanitarian work when it comes to animals, especially here in Eastern Europe. You have a lot of stray animals on the streets, and like often I'm asked, like, oh, Miha, why don't you have, like any pictures of, boats and this and that? I say, well, if I put pictures on my Facebook of, what freedom means to me, you would all think that I went crazy because, what freedom is for me is running around the streets and chasing dogs and then fostering them and finding them new families and things like that. So I don't know. Those are the things that really, I guess I was lucky enough that I had a lot of material stuff. And after that failure, I really saw it for what it was and how empty my life was on the inside. And now material stuff really, I couldn't care less about any material. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not against earning money because the more I earn, the more good I can do. But when it comes to myself and, what do I need? I need a roof over my head. I need something to eat, something to drink, even not too much because I still need to lose a few kilos. And that's more or less it, and all the rest can go for the betterment of the world, or at least my surrounding.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to, as you're growing or whatever you can do for, globally or like you said, for your immediate community is important because it just makes the whole, place a better place. And it's more enjoyable for you and people. Obviously, you're giving a lot of experience to drive people to succeed and reach their goals as well. So that's only kind of a win-win. You're getting that satisfaction and they're getting that value as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very egotistical. I mean, yeah, people think that I do all these things to help, but that, like, on the other hand, there is no feeling like that warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart when you know you get an email or you get a phone call and the person tells you like, oh, you really helped me go over this, or you helped me create this, or now I can employ so many people that I wouldn't be able to without your guidance and your help. And I mean, yes, that's what I get from it. And it's it's like heroin. It's addictive. The more you do it, the more you want to do it.
No, I agree. I think that kind of giving back aspect, whatever you do, you just want to do more of it. And I mean, that's kind of ingrained at this point as part of your, core and personality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I look back, I had so much of the material stuff, but my life was empty. Uh, the friendships were empty. My marriage was empty. Like my whole life was very empty. And now I don't have much in the material sense. I have, when I go to bed, I know that I repaid those debts and so on. But the fulfillment in your heart, inside, you feel like you are the richest person in the world.
Yep, I agree. So, what's one weakness that you may have seen in yourself in the past that you turned around and utilize as a strength today?
Oh, I mean, if you remember, I said that after I walked back in from the balcony, I made a whole list of everything. So, I mean, there were just so many weaknesses, but like, I don't know, maybe one could definitely be that I started doing relationships in a much better way. So before, um, I treated relationships that should be on a long run almost like one night stands. You just jump into bed and that's it. And now, I really make sure that I go on a few dates. And I'm not talking, about just relationships, private relationships, but also, with potential business partners, with joint ventures, with your employees, with your clients, your suppliers, and so on. So, whenever a relationship is meant to be on a longer run, if it's not, oh, I need one picture edited and that's it, but that you'll be working with somebody for a longer time, I make sure to really develop that relationship and to nurture it, to have a few dates, to see if people are walking the talk, because I stopped listening to people. And one thing that is also very close to my heart is the saying that says, respect everyone, wait for no one. Your life, your dreams, your goals, it's your responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. You can't really, there's a lot of people that blame other people for their situations. And yes, there are
Other
some
people,
unfortunate.
everybody else.
Yeah, and there are some unfortunate situations. Some cards people are dealt aren't the best cards, but if you take that kind of positive mindset and focus how you can overcome that and kind of use that pain and harness it, you're going to go a lot further than dwelling on it. Like poor me, everyone's against me, and that kind of negative mentality.
I mean, that doesn't help in any way, because when you, even if it's true that it's somebody else's fault or the government's fault or like whatever, hurricane's fault, which you have obviously no influence over, but if you go in that way in your thinking, what happens is you put yourself in a passive position. The signal that you give to your brain is, well, just stand and wait until something that's outside of us changes, and then we can start moving. But if you take that charge, if you take that responsibility, even for things that maybe aren't really your fault, but if you take that, grab the bull by the horn, you give your brain the signal, and like, oh, let's figure out what we can do, how can we overcome, what's our possible next step, or this or that, anything, but what can we do?
Yep, it's like kind of giving yourself permission to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what's one piece of advice you can leave with the audience?
um Usually I always say this at the end of the interview is, stay humble, uh, because it's so easy to get cocky and to get overconfident. Be grateful. And when I say be grateful, I don't just mean, like, oh, you wake up and you say, oh, thankfully I'm alive, but more in a sense where, you'll always lack certain resources. Even, China, even Apple are not unlimited. They still lack certain resources. And just work with what you have, do something with what you have, and not just constantly focus on what you don't yet have, because then you just stand still and you can't do anything. And then the third one, aligned with the whole fail coach concept, is, learn to fail fast and fail forward. And you do that by, establishing healthy emotional relationship with failure.
No, I agree that obviously the faster you fail and then you don't dwell on it in a negative aspect, take those learnings and carry them over, you're going to get to your goal faster. And the whole China example, I think people focus on, what they're weak at, and schools tell people, improve at these weaknesses. But like you said, it's important to figure out what you're really good at, and you enjoy doing, and then double down on that and don't focus on your weaknesses, because some of your weaknesses, even in terms of business, you can outsource and then focus on your strengths.
Absolutely, yes.
So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you or anything else you may have going on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, where I do most of my content, if they want to see what I put out, is on LinkedIn and on Facebook. They can just find me there. But if they want to get to know me a little bit, and maybe they have certain struggles that they would love to talk about with me, then I just love talking with entrepreneurs. I already mentioned that a few times. I open my Zoom client a few times a month, and I just invite people to jump in, and we brainstorm, we mastermind, we chat, we get to know each other, and so on. So if they want to do that, there is a very simple link, frameworkforfreedom.me, and it takes them really into my chat bot, straight to that sequence where they get then notifications when I will open my next Zoom call. And then they can jump in and ask me whatever they want, and we focus on their specific problems, their specific struggles that they're having.
Awesome. I really appreciate your time and the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. And I do hope that it will be valuable to your audience.
I think it will. Have a good day.
Likewise.